Electronics often go wrong in crop circles. Some people will describe a strange tingling, headaches, or feeling rather ill.
What if the strange circles appearing in fields all over the world for the last 50 years were not random marks, but pieces of a language still being built? In 2025, a small group of Google DeepMind researchers ran an unofficial experiment, feeding more than 12,000 crop circle images into AI to search for hidden patterns. It found no direct alien message. Instead, it uncovered a steady progression. Simple circles growing larger, more complex, and carrying more information each year. If these designs are truly evolving, who or what is guiding them? What are they building toward? And after decades of treating crop circles as a joke, have we dismissed them too quickly? What the AI found left even experts deeply unsettled. The strange origins of crop circles. First, we need to understand what Google DeepMind's AI was actually looking for. Researchers gave it thousands of crop circle images, but each image also came with the date and place the formation was found, the weather and soil conditions, the complexity of the design, and whether it had been linked to human makers or remained unexplained. So the AI did not just have pictures, it had the full story behind each formation. It was not told to search for aliens. It was simply asked to compare the entire record and find patterns people might have missed. That meant comparing today's massive designs with the earliest reports ever recorded. And that trail leads back centuries, to a time when strange marks in crops were blamed on violent storms, flying objects, and even the devil. The first famous case appeared in England in 1678, inside a small pamphlet called The Mowing Devil. It told the story of a wealthy farmer in Hertfordshire who needed someone to cut his field of oats. A worker offered to do the job, but the farmer refused his price. He became so angry that he said he would rather have the devil mow the field. That night, the field reportedly glowed as if it were on fire. By morning, the oats had been cut in a way that no ordinary person could have done. The pamphlet even showed a horned devil holding a large blade inside a ring of crops. It sounds like the world's first crop circle. The next major case was very different. In July of 1880, a scientist named John Rand Capron walked through fields near Guildford in Surrey after a night of violent storms. Large sections of wheat had been knocked flat. In one field, Capron found several round patches. Some had standing wheat in the center. Others had stalks arranged in curved lines around the edge. Capron did not blame the devil or visitors from space. He believed spinning winds had struck the fields during the storm. That might explain these simple circles, but it could not explain the enormous pictures, perfect symbols, and carefully measured patterns that came next. In January of 1966, a farmer named George Pedley was driving a tractor near Thule, Australia, when he said he saw a strange object rise from a lagoon. He described it as a gray, saucer-shaped craft that climbed into the air and flew away. When Pedley reached the spot, he found a large patch of reeds lying flat on the water. The plants had been pushed into a rough circle and appeared to turn in one direction. The strange mark became known as the Tully saucer nest. Police were called, the story reached newspapers, and people traveled to the lagoon to see it. The circle was about 9 meters across, and the tangled reeds formed a floating mat strong enough to hold a person. Soon, hundreds of visitors were driving onto the farm. They trampled sugar cane, climbed onto the reeds, and waited for another object to appear. Reporters spent the night beside the lagoon fighting mosquitoes while they watched the sky. Nothing returned. Yet the lack of an answer only made the case bigger. Photographs of the flattened reeds spread across Australia, and a mark in a lagoon became the model for something people would begin searching for in fields around the world. Possible causes included a strong downward blast of air, a small whirlwind, or a waterspout. No solid proof ever showed that a craft had landed there. But the idea was now fixed in the public mind. If a strange circle appeared on the ground, perhaps something had come down from the sky. That belief crossed the world and took root in southern England. During the late 1970s, simple circles began appearing in cereal fields. Most were plain areas of flattened crop. Some had a ring around them. Others had one or two smaller circles nearby. Farmers often discovered them in the morning after whoever or whatever made them had gone. From the ground, they looked like damaged plants. But from the air, they looked clean and deliberate. Newspapers linked them to flying saucers. Others blamed strange winds or late-night pranksters. At first, every explanation seemed possible. Storms could flatten crops. A person could easily press down a small circle. and UFO stories had already shaped what people expected an alien landing site to look like. Then the designs began to change, becoming extremely complex. How crop circles became so complex? By the end of the 1980s, the mystery changed. The early formations were simple enough to blame on wind, animals, or someone playing a joke. But the new ones looked planned. A large circle would appear with a clean ring around it. Then smaller circles began showing up at fixed points around the main shape. Straight paths linked separate parts together. Before long, the fields contained triangles, rectangles, crescents, long tails, and rows of circles that changed in size without losing their balance. By 1990, some formations stretched across the crops like giant symbols. They became known as pictograms because several shapes had been joined to create one complete image. One of the most famous appeared at Alton Barns in Wiltshire. It had a long, straight body, large circles, smaller rings, and shapes spreading out from both sides. Then, in August of 1991, a formation appeared near Cambridge that pushed the mystery into a completely different world. It copied the shape of the Mandelbrot set, one of the best-known images in modern mathematics. The Mandelbrot set is a fractal. A fractal is a pattern built from shapes that repeat in smaller forms. Computers normally draw it by repeating the same calculation. Its outline has one large, rounded section, several smaller sections, and tiny repeated shapes along its edge. The formation in the field had the clear outline of that famous mathematical image. Wind could flatten crops into uneven patches, but it could not choose a known fractal and draw it in the right form. Whatever had created this design understood the picture. That changed the question. People started asking how someone standing inside tall crops could create a picture that only made sense when viewed from far above. 5 years later, another formation made that question even harder to ignore. In July of 1996, a huge spiral design appeared in a wheat field across the road from Stonehenge. It became known as the Stonehenge-Julia set. A Julia set is another kind of fractal. A mathematical rule creates a shape. Then similar parts of that shape appear again at different sizes. In the field, this idea had been turned into a long curving line of circles. The circles grew larger as the spiral opened, yet the curve remained smooth from one end to the other. The full formation stretched for hundreds of feet. From the ground, a person could see only separate circles and walls of standing wheat. From the air, those pieces locked together into one clean spiral. Its position beside Stonehenge made the image even more powerful. The formation contained 151 circles and stretched more than 900 feet along its spine. Tiny circles gathered at one end, while the largest opened across the field at the other end. The scale kept growing. In August of 2001, another formation appeared at Milk Hill in Wiltshire. It was close to 900 feet across, making it one of the largest complex crop formations ever recorded. The design looked like a huge turning wheel. 6 curved arms spread from the center, and each arm was built from a long chain of circles. The circles became smaller as the arms moved outward, creating a sense of movement across the entire field. Hundreds of separate parts had to line up closely enough to form one balanced image. The fields had become a public gallery with no artist standing beside the work. Mathematics, planning, and real skill were clearly involved. The shapes were not beyond human knowledge. The mystery was how people could transfer that knowledge into a field in darkness without seeing the complete picture from above. For years, people searched the sky for an answer. Then 2 men claimed the answer had been in the fields all along. How humans made the impossible. In September of 1991, 2 British painters named Doug Bower and Dave Chorley stepped in front of the press and made an extraordinary claim. They said they had spent about 13 years creating crop circles across southern England. They were 2 friends in their 60s who enjoyed painting, drinking at their local pub, and watching the public struggle to explain the circles appearing in the fields. Bower said the Tully saucer nest had given him the idea. One evening, he suggested that they make their own mark in a field and let people believe a flying saucer had landed there. Their first attempts were basic circles, because that was exactly what a supposed landing site was expected to look like. Their equipment was almost laughably simple. They placed a stake at the center, tied a rope to it, and used the rope to mark the edge of the circle. Then they pressed the crop down with a flat wooden board. By keeping the rope tight and moving around the center, they could produce a clean round shape. Straight lines were harder, So Bauer added a loop of wire to the front of a baseball cap. He looked through the loop at a distant object, then walked toward it while keeping the object centered. The loop worked like a simple aiming device, helping him move in a straight line across the field. They used tractor tracks to hide their route into the field. Working at night, they carried small tools and left before sunrise. As the years passed, they added rings, paths, and extra circles. They claimed to have made hundreds before going public. But their confession alone was not enough. They needed to show that their method worked. For the Today newspaper, Bauer and Chorley created a new formation in a field in Kent. Crop circle researcher Pat Delgado was taken to the site without being told who had made it. After examining the plants and the design, he said no human could have created it and described the pattern as the work of a higher intelligence. Then the two painters were introduced to him. Delgado realized that the formation he had judged as unexplained had been made with boards and rope. His mistake exposed a major problem. A circle could look clean, strange, and completely convincing while still having an ordinary human source. The story spread across newspapers and television. Many people believed the mystery had finally been solved, but crop formations did not stop. They continued appearing, and some became far more complex than anything Bauer and Chorley had demonstrated. New artists challenged one another without ever meeting. 1 year later, a controlled competition put human ability to a much harder test. On the night of July 11, 1992, 12 teams gathered at a wheat field in West Wycombe, Buckinghamshire, for the International Crop Circle Making Competition. A prize of £3,000 was offered to the team that produced the best formation. Every team received the same design. It included several circles, narrow rings, and different directions in which the wheat had to lie. These were features that many believers said people could not create properly. The teams were allowed into the field at 10 at night and had to leave by 3 in the morning. Clouds covered the sky, rain fell through the night, and moonlight was rare. Organizers patrolled with night vision equipment, and gamekeepers guarded the field after the teams left. At sunrise, a helicopter photographed the results before the judges entered. 11 of the 12 teams produced recognizable versions of the design. The winning team was made up of 3 young engineers from the Westland Helicopter Company. Before receiving the prize, they had to build the formation again in daylight, while hundreds of people, reporters, and television crews watched. Their tools were simple. A piece of plastic pipe with a rope through it worked as a roller. They pushed it with their feet to flatten the wheat. To move through the standing crop without leaving a trail, they placed a plank between 2 light stepladders and used it as a small bridge. They created rings with a device made from plastic pipes that could slide in and out to change length. It was fixed above the ground with a string attached to its end. A team member could walk around the center and create a perfect ring without placing a stake or leaving a single footprint in the middle. The competition settled one major question. People could make the perfect rings, clean edges, changing crop directions, and hidden entry paths that many had claimed were impossible. They could do it at night, in bad weather, using simple tools that fit inside a car. Then the mystery took a sharper turn. The fields began displaying numbers, codes, and what looked like messages. Decoding the strangest crop circles. One of the clearest examples appeared near Barbury Castle in Wiltshire in May of 2008. The formation was about 150 feet wide and looked like a huge spiral divided by a series of notches. At first, it seemed like just another carefully designed pattern. Then astrophysicist Mike Reed noticed that the spaces between the notches were not random. They represented pi, which begins with 3.141592654. The formation was divided into 10 sections, 1 for each possible digit. A small point marked the decimal place, and the notches that followed revealed each digit in the correct order. This was not a vague shape that people had simply chosen to interpret as a message. The digits could be traced around the spiral, and they matched pi exactly. The Barbury Castle spiral showed that a crop formation could carry exact information, but 7 years earlier, another formation had appeared to do something far more unsettling. That story began on November 16, 1974, when the Arecibo radio telescope sent a powerful message into space. It was mainly a demonstration of the telescope's power to reach space. The message was created by astronomer Frank Drake and other scientists, with help from Carl Sagan. It was not a spoken greeting. It was a stream of 1,679 ones and zeros. That number was chosen carefully. It can be divided into 23 and 73, two numbers that cannot be divided evenly by anything except themselves and 1. If the signal was arranged as 23 spaces across and 73 spaces down, it formed a simple picture. The picture contained the numbers from 1 to 10, the main chemicals used by life on Earth, the shape of DNA, a human figure, the human population at the time, the solar system, and the Arecibo telescope. The whole transmission lasted less than 3 minutes. It was aimed at a huge group of stars called Messier 13, about 25,000 light-years away. Even moving at the speed of light, the message would need around 25,000 years to arrive. A reply sent back would need roughly the same amount of time again. Then, in August of 2001, a formation appeared in a field beside the Chilbolton Observatory in Hampshire. It used the same 23 by 73 grid as the Arecibo message. Most of the original sections were still there, but key details had changed. The human figure had been replaced by a short being with a large head. The DNA section was different. Silicon had been added to the list of important elements. The population number was far larger, several planets were marked, and the picture of the Arecibo telescope had been replaced by a different transmitter. It looked like a reply written in the same format humanity had used to introduce itself. Its location beside a real radio observatory made it even more convincing. But the timing created an immediate problem. The original signal had traveled for only 27 years. It was still almost 25,000 years away from its target. Any direct reply from Messier 13 was impossible. The formation also copied a human-made message, used the same grid, and changed it with images already common in science fiction. A large-headed alien and silicon-based life would have been familiar ideas to almost anyone interested in UFO stories. Still, the design was brilliant. 1 year later, the message became even more direct. In August of 2002, a formation appeared near Crabwood, outside Winchester. It showed the face of a large-headed being beside a round disc covered with small blocks. From above, the face looked like a black and white photograph made from flattened and standing wheat. The disc was arranged as a spiral. The blocks could be read as 1s and 0s, then separated into groups of 8. Those groups matched a computer system used to turn numbers into letters and symbols. When interpreters followed the spiral, they produced a message in English. The message warned about false gifts, broken promises, deception, and pain. It also said there was still time, that good existed, and that the link was closing. But the strangest evidence was not always visible from above. Some of it was hidden inside the stalks. What scientists found in the plants. When stiff stalks are forced flat to create a crop circle, you might expect some of them to snap, but inside certain formations, investigators found stalks that had bent at the nodes without breaking. Even while lying flat, many were still alive. Some stalks also had tiny holes in their nodes. Researcher William Levengood decided to investigate. He collected plant and soil samples from crop formations in several countries, then compared them with normal samples from other parts of the same fields. In 1994, he reported several unusual differences, including longer nodes, bent stems, tiny holes, and changes in some seeds. A later study with Nancy Talbot found similar changes in node length across several formations. Levengood believed the plants had been hit by a short burst of energy that heated the water inside their stalks, almost like a microwave. This could have softened the plants enough to bend, stretched their nodes, or created holes as steam escaped, all without burning the crops. If he was right, the formations might have involved equipment far more advanced than ropes and wooden boards. But there was one major problem. His studies never proved what had caused the changes. Levengood's research group also reported finding tiny magnetic particles at some crop circle sites. In one formation, they found an iron-rich material that appeared partly melted and stuck to grains of soil. Other samples contained tiny round particles made mostly of iron, but these materials only appeared at selected sites. They were not found in every crop formation, and that led to the biggest weakness in the entire investigation. Most samples were collected only after a formation had been discovered. Researchers had not watched it being made. They did not know exactly when the plants had been flattened, what had touched them, how long they had been lying there, or whether visitors had already disturbed the area. Even the normal plants used for comparison created problems. Two plants growing in the same field can still develop differently. Water, shade, soil, fertilizer, disease, and the age of each stalk can all affect its size and strength. so a plant collected several yards away might not be a perfect match. There was also a danger of using the evidence to prove itself. If researchers declared a formation unexplained because its plants looked unusual, and then used those same unusual plants as proof that it was unexplained, the argument simply went in a circle. The differences might have been real, but their cause was still unknown. In 2005, Francesco Grassi, Claudio Cocceo, and Paolo Russo published a detailed criticism of the plant studies. They did not claim that every measurement had been invented. They argued that the measurements could not prove the existence of a strange energy source without stronger experiments and better comparisons. They said too few formations had been tested, with too few samples taken from each one. They also questioned how the plants were divided into affected and unaffected groups. Most importantly, similar number patterns had appeared in formations already known to be human-made. If people could produce the same pattern, it could not be used as proof of a non-human cause. The critics also challenged the energy theory itself. Heating a plant depends on several things: how much water it contains, the direction of the energy, the angle of the stalk, and how much energy the plant actually absorbs. Without accounting for those details, there was no way to show that one specific source had caused the changes. This sparked a fierce scientific debate. Levengood's supporters argued that the changes in the nodes followed the shapes of the formations too closely to ignore. His critics replied that even a clear pattern could come from ordinary flattening, wind, natural plant growth, or simply the way the samples had been chosen. And cereal plants are far more flexible than they look. Farmers regularly deal with a problem called lodging, where wheat, barley, and other grain crops bend or fall over. Strong winds, heavy rain, weak stems, or loose roots can flatten large sections of a field. Some stalks snap, but many simply bend and remain alive. Young or damp plants are especially flexible, so a board or roller can press them down without breaking every stem. That is why the claim that human pressure must snap the crops does not hold up. It depends on the type of plant, its age, how much moisture it contains, and how much force is used, and the plants keep changing after they have been flattened. Once a living stalk is lying sideways, it begins turning upward again as it responds to gravity. One side grows faster than the other, causing the stem to curve. Over time, this natural reaction can change both the shape and length of its nodes, so the same crop formation may look very different depending on when investigators examine it. Samples collected the next morning might not match samples collected several days later. Without knowing exactly when and how the formation was created, it becomes extremely difficult to separate changes caused during the event from changes the plant developed afterward. With no clear answer inside the stalks, the next clue came from where the formations kept appearing. Inside the world's crop circle capital. Between 2018 and 2022, almost two-thirds of England's recorded crop circles appeared in this one county. Another 27% appeared next door in Hampshire. The great worldwide mystery had a remarkably small center. Wiltshire already looked mysterious long before anyone pressed wheat into shapes. Stonehenge stands inside one of Europe's richest ancient landscapes. Its huge stone ring was finished about 4,500 years ago, but the wider site had been used and changed for many centuries. Farther north is Avebury, where the largest stone circle in Britain surrounds part of a living village. Nearby are ancient tombs, long lines of standing stones, and Silbury Hill, the largest human-made mound in Europe. This does not prove that crop circles are tied to some lost power beneath the ground, but their makers could hardly choose a more powerful stage. Put the same design beside an ordinary road, and it may look like field art. Place it beside Stonehenge or Silbury Hill, and people immediately ask whether the two are connected. The area was ready for that idea. During the 1960s, the Wiltshire town of Warminster became famous for strange noises and reported objects in the sky. UFO watchers gathered on nearby hills and spent nights looking for lights. Rumors of saucer landing marks were already moving through the area before the modern crop circle wave began. When circles later appeared in Wiltshire's fields, they entered a story that had been waiting for them. The land itself also helps. Wiltshire has wide cereal fields spread across open, rolling hills. Tractor lines run through the crops, giving people a way into a field without crushing a clear path from the road. A team can measure from those lines, work below the height of the standing crop, and leave by the same route. The surrounding hills and roads then give photographers places to see the finished design. The damage is not small. From 2018 to 2022, 92 recorded formations across England affected more than 40 football fields of farmland and cost farmers about £30,000. The lost wheat and barley could have made around 300,000 loaves of bread. The lost oilseed rape could have produced about 600 liters of oil. In Wiltshire alone, 15 formations covered roughly 55,000 square meters during 2021 and 2022. Yet police received only 3 reports of criminal damage. Many farmers believe reporting it will achieve little. The makers arrive at night and are usually gone long before the design is found. One rare case showed how hard it is to catch them. In 2000, Matthew Williams made a 7-pointed star in winter wheat near Marlborough after hearing someone claim that people could not create one. He photographed it and sent the picture to a radio host. The image was passed on, the police traced the case, and Williams admitted what he had done. He was fined £100 and ordered to pay £40 in costs. The farmer's damaged crop was valued at £200. Williams was caught because he wanted people to know what he had proved. Most makers want the opposite. Their work becomes more powerful when no one signs it. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.